Now may I call upon Mr. Ashish Mathur, Director Test Automation, UI Test Automation, HCL Software. Ashish leads the development of test automation products from HCL Software and has 30 years of experience in building commercial test automation products related to test management, UI, and performance testing. His current area of focus is to implement machine learning technologies to help increase the efficiency in the test automation. His topic will be, how does your test automation strategy influence shipping a quality product in time? I hand over the stage to Ashish.
All right, just a sound check. Everybody can hear me all right? All the way at the back. Because what I'm going to say is not going to put you to sleep, not going to bore you, hopefully wake you up and keep you involved. I will give you a couple of disclaimers before I start. I'm not here to sell. I'm not the sales guy at HCL. The first question I want to ask you, though, in the theme, what I've been told, and Ramit, is that correct, is that I have to ask questions to make sure everybody is still awake, right? So we'll continue to do that. The first question I ask is, how many people know HCL technologies? Oh, I should have asked the other way around. How many people don't know HCL technologies? But how many people actually know HCL software? Yeah, I think this is the challenge I'm going to try to overcome today. Everybody's known HCL Technologies, 45-year-old company, been doing services and being at different customers. Everybody's aware of them, right? However, 7 years ago, HCL decided to foray into software products, and he had three choices, right? Either do a startup, or go buy the startups, or buy something that has been tried and true and has been around for a while. And that's when they went to IBM and bought a bunch of products. And now, having been in HCL for 7 years, it feels like I'm back in IBM in the software group, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's great to be in here. So that's all I will say about HCL software. I just wanted to impress on folks that HCL is now a product company. We sell commercial off-the-shelf products that any and everybody is free to use, and want to dispel the notion that, oh, these are services guys trying to build products for themselves and try to do managed services and all that, right? That's not the case. So these are tried and true 20-year-old products. But at the same time, as much as I'm 53 years old, I try not to act like a 53-year-old. Same way with the products which are 20-year-old, they will have all the niceties of what modern-day software is supposed to do. And also the other thing I want to suggest is that we are on that journey. You've heard a lot of things since morning about what is important for testing, how testers are getting challenged because of the buzzwords. I will not try very hard not to use the buzzwords because of that, and how our lives are in danger. I have this unique privilege to have started out as a tester and spent 5 years doing pure testing before I decided I think I have to build products which are better for testers. In my life, I didn't like my life the way it was, so I forayed into actually building test automation tools, and have been doing exactly the same thing for 30 years. Gladly completed 30 years last month, and plan to do that forever. However, back to the products, and the other thing I will tell you is I will not sell, and I will also not try to demonstrate, jazz you with all the capabilities of the products. We have a booth there. Please feel free to walk by, and we have smart people there that can go through in-depth demos of the products and tell you what they have. However, what I want to challenge you with, and this is really from my point of view, if you have been at Step-In the past, the last time we met face-to-face was 4 years ago, and I will try to continue the journey from there. If you've been there 4 years ago, you will recognize some of the things that we were talking about in 2019. 4 years, right? It's really a long time, 4 years in this industry. We were talking about a few simple things. We talked about many more, but we started out by saying, coding, yeah, that's great, but really, do I want to spend all my time coding, or do I want to be testing? And we said, it's good to have drag and drop, fancy capabilities, have a visual view into what I'm testing. And we said visual is very important. It's good to see. It's good to see various aspects of my application and my test and how they gel well together and what is out of sync and what do I need to update in my test because the application has changed. Those kind of things. We talked about that quite a bit, and I think everybody was been in that journey. You will see whether it's me or whether our competition, everybody talking about kind of very similar things. We talked about that 4 years ago, and I think a lot of us have made a good progress on that. Scriptless was the other thing. We said, we don't want to, like I said, write code. But being with the theme of what we heard from Vipul and Rahul in the morning, is that, let me assure all of us, right, our lives are not in danger. As testers, we will just get to do better and better testing. As simple as that. If you believe it, you will be happy. If you give into YouTube videos that says testers' jobs are coming to an end, God be with you. I'm reminded of one thing that I will say. My manager and mentor who retired last month after 36 years in testing, test automation, he used to write all the code in VI, and it better compile when he checked it in. Better. I mean, before running the compiler, it would compile. So when IDEs came about, we didn't say our developers' lives in danger because IDEs can do all that, right? They won't even make you think. None of that happens. We will still think, we think today, and we will still continue to think tomorrow. And that is how the tools will get better and better, so we can do better things. And then finally, we said AI. AI has been hot for a while. If you ask, it's very interesting. And 4 years ago, when I was presenting the front row, and I said, I have this capability in the tool, and I called it an algorithm. I said, I have a test that has been running well for a while, and today suddenly it failed. And it failed because the developer checked in a change without telling me, right? What do I do now? So now I have to go figure out all the test cases that failed and go manually change them and all. I said, why do I have to do that? And I said, we have this capability that you can run the test case, and the test case will figure out what has changed in the application, and either it will alert you, or it will go fix it automatically, because there's no point, right? That capability has been there. That's AI that we talked about. I said this is an algorithm. The people in the front row said, no, Ashish, you're wrong. This is AI. In fact, somebody said, this is ML. I'm like, at that point, I had no idea what ML was. With AI, I had only done my master's course 30 years ago in AI, in Lisp, and that didn't make any sense to me. But I said it's still an algorithm. However, having said that, what we are going to talk about today, and like I said, this is not sales. I'm going to seed some thought, and I would be very happy if you came back and said, Ashish, this is the direction we should go in. This is the kind of thought process we should have. And I would very well welcome that. And please feel free to challenge what I'm saying. And tell me, Ashish, you're wrong. I would love to hear that. And I will have greater conversation with you guys, right, when you say that. So the first 3 different topics, I thought what would be most important is talk about maintenance. Maintenance, we all agree, right? We heard this morning also that maintenance is a challenge. That's where our lives, we spend most of our lives in. And we wish we didn't need to spend so much time on mundane maintenance. We would love to do some creative work in maintenance, but not the mundane. So from that standpoint, I will mention one thought process. I will admit that this is not a feature in the product yet, but this is a thought process we're working on. It's called AI Vision. I had to give it a fancy name so that next year when I come and talk about it, everybody will remember, Ashish, you said AI Vision, what happened to that, right? And you can decide to call it whatever you want. The other is the data. If you're 4 years ago, we talked about the fact that you're doing UI testing, you do API testing, you do performance testing, and I asked this question, how many people do everything? 4 hands went up. I am hoping, I'm going to ask this question again today. How many people do all kinds of testing, whether it's UI or API or embedded or performance or any of these, together? Anybody? So we're still in the same silos that some people do this, some people do that, and they don't talk to each other, and application goes out. That's one of the thinking we have is that the silos are bad. If you can mix all of them together, we talked about that 4 years ago. Of course, in the tool you can do that. You can mix and match. You can put your UI test, your Selenium test, your JMeter test, your SOAP UI test, whatever you have, and into a mix, whichever way you want, and create that workload. I'll talk about why data is important at that point. And if you have been in this industry trying to do both performance testing and associate data with it, you will know that the data generation tools have always costed 5 times more than the test automation tool, which makes it a pointless exercise to even consider it. And how many people have done this? Opened an Excel spreadsheet, typed in a row of data, drag down, and suddenly you have lots of data? May or may not be real, may or may not work. However, what you really want is, tell the tool I want data. And this is my constraints, and this is what I want, right? And then finally, we'll talk about, you've done performance analysis, you've done AI vision, you have kind of generated your test cases, you've moved on to performance. And by the way, I will mention one more thing is, although I asked you how do you do UI and performance together, I will show you how you can migrate from one to the other seamlessly. And then, if you've done that, and then at the end, you have a lot of data, you've run a lot of test cases, how do you analyze it? You're going to sit down and spend a lot of time on that, right? So we'll talk about those 3 topics, but more importantly, I will tell you what we are thinking, and then you can tell me what's right, maybe. But first, let me do the context setting. Why are we talking about all this? The context is simple. It's DevOps. Somebody asked me a question at the booth about how do you plug into CI/CD tools. I said, this is the infinite loop. Everybody's familiar with it. There's the dev side and the ops side, and in the dev you start with planning, you have code, you build the application, you test it. Can anybody suggest what is missing from this on the dev side? Security, yeah, testing, right? Yeah, absolutely. Security is, I think security should be on the top, right? Perfect. Manu, I didn't pay you to say that, did I? No. So, thanks for that. Yeah, I wish it had come from the crowd. Manu also works with me at HCL. So, what is missing is design. And the question for the audience is, how many of your organizations have invested in formal design of the product? Do you start writing code? Does your organization start writing code directly, or do they do designs, formal designs? Design? Because there's no other way to communicate from a developer to a tester. If testers are not involved at the time of design to know what the hell is being built, what test cases am I writing? How am I writing? How do I know it's going to work or not? So at our organization, design has become front and center for whatever we build. And we being in the situation where we build a testing tool and test it with the same testing tool that we are building, it is imperative that we design. No 2 ways about that. So I have with my whole slide deck, I take offense, although I've created it. But next year when we talk, I'll fix the slide deck. So yes, design is missing from here. It's a very imperative part. You can say it's part of planning, but it's not really. It's a real separate step that hopefully comes before code. But if developers have their way, it will come after code, right? After thought of coding. Now, different aspects of it, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the mundane things that you already know about, but I wanted to set the context on some pictures so that we can talk to it. So every part of it, talks about what things you want to do in that. So in the testing case where I said you want to do UI testing, you want to do performance testing, API testing, embedded testing, all these kinds of testings. And that includes, by the way, if you're doing API testing, you're obviously already thinking service virtualization is, I don't have my APIs, how do I virtualize? Somebody asked a very good question at booth was, yeah, you can virtualize APIs, and Manu, this is one for you, is you can virtualize the APIs, but what about the whole microservice? I haven't started working on the microservice. Can you virtualize the whole thing and make progress in your testing? Something for us to think about, right? I'll move on and say, the focus is really on these 3 types of testing which are paramount, which for a typical application is at the UI layer, performance layer, and the API layer. And more importantly, like I said before, it's not the silos that count. Unless you're able to put them all together and compound that with service virtualization and data fabrication, I don't think I can call it a solution, frankly. And if I'm able to do that across all types of testing and get the final report that says, yeah, you're good to release, I don't get a good sense for it. That's why you end up with defects that come afterwards, right? So Again, a plug. As much as I said, I wouldn't do that. But all the things that I talk about here are obviously supported by HCL software, and you can come and talk to us at the booth. But at the browser end, this is 2023 is not the time you want to talk about, does it support Opera, latest version, does it support mainframes, does it support Oracle, does it support SAP? It's a given. If you have a product that doesn't support all the technologies that are out there, you don't have a solution. In fact, it's very interesting that as much as the world says everybody is moving to the web, yeah, all that is true, but there is still a component at the back which is either mainframe or C# or whatever, right? There are always these hybrid set of environments, and you don't want to say, okay, I use Selenium, I'm done with my web testing, and what do I do now? I have this Java application, what do I do? So yeah, I mean, you could probably download a Java driver of some Selenium driver of some sort, but do you really want to do that is the question. So technologies, right? Technology support all across the board, whether it's from the UI front end or from an API front end. API, somebody was asking, you can do HTTP APIs, but can you do others? We have a myriad list of APIs. I don't think we have left any APIs or message formats that we don't support. So I will not go into that, and we can certainly talk about it at the booth. And then, like I said, if you're able to put everything together into a single effort, that's even better, and that's definitely what we are allowed to do. And then finally, end of the day, you want to do performance testing to make sure that you can onboard your customers faster than you want, right? Want is a very interesting thing because can you afford it? Can you afford people to log in and do the load? So, and then service virtualization, we talked about that. We can certainly dig deep into at the booth. And then include, adopt open source and be able to have you migrate from open source to proprietary if you wanted to, and that's all supported on the platform. So the three things that I wanted us to take away from here today, and I want you to challenge me on this, is first is, I said design is important in DevOps. And what if, and this is, if you rewind back to when development, the buzzword was TDD, test-driven development. So you would write your tests first, and you run your tests, and they all fail. Guess why? Because the application is not there yet. What if we did the same thing with designs? If the designs had that clarity on, it doesn't necessarily have to have the clarity, but have to have the intention and thought of what is in the design, what the application is going to look like, what functionality they're going to have. And if you're able to define all your test cases, you are exactly in the same boat of TDD is used at the end of design, before application development. You can run your test case and it fails because the application is not there. And as the screen comes about, the test starts passing. Now, compound that with what I said 4 years ago was, if the test fails, it didn't find what it was looking for, I said at that point that we have the ability to auto-adjust the test and keep going. So what we are embarking on is moving testing as much earlier in the cycle as we can. So that, like I was saying to somebody, my recent customer that I was talking to, he said, I got advised on 14th August that we have a release on 16th August. Can you complete functional testing by then? Tomorrow being a holiday, right? That's the state testers are in today, and we want to avoid that. And if you could have your test cases ready. Now, granted, designs are just drawings. They're not going to have the in-depth detail. Rahul talked about boundary conditions, right? Not going to have that. However, will we have test cases ready so that our 50, 60% of the job is done, and what we have remaining is something we can accommodate? Now we are talking DevOps a little bit. Real DevOps. In that, if you ask me, before I shut shop on my life in this profession, I want to get to the point where it's not test automation we're working on. It is the automation of test automation that we're working on. Is you start with click a button, and in the morning when you get up, all your test cases are designed and implemented, and now you are putting in the creativity into it. And I think that's where we need to head. And that's why we are trying to move testing as earlier in the cycle as possible. So at this point, this is what we are embarking on, is you see a design screen that came out from the designers. We run it through, okay, I will say AI and ML. Through the function, and out comes recognition of what's on the controls, and out comes a test case out of that. and that test case is then executed as the application starts building. And one of the things that is necessary to come out of that is the designers did a great job. They did it because we told them to. But at the end of the day, did the implementers conform to the design, or did they deviate? That's very important. And as testers who are into the services mode, they have a delivery model. They have to audit and prove that yes, they in fact built what was expected out of them, right? So that's the real report at the end: is did we implement what was asked of us, or did we do whatever we felt like? And that's where we are heading. The report at the end needs to suggest that what was originally intended was what ended up. The other part of the thought that I want to proceed is data fabrication. I don't think there's a whole lot to say about that, but data is important. The variety of data that is required for applications today is intense. Is much more than it was. It used to be simple, address, phone number, name. That did it, right? Now it's not that. There's tons and tons of types of data, and you need to really design what your data wants to look like, how you want to generate your data, what are the columns needed, how do you organize it together, all that. And having that on the same platform where you're using it is so much better than that. So we'll talk about that at booth for somebody interested. You will have rules in generating the data, so you want to be able to save the rules and so that you can generate the data again and again to reuse in your application. Just make it all simple, make it right next to where the application is. If the data generation is able to view into the tests to see what kind of tests you have and is automatically able to generate what kind of data, what kind of spreadsheet you want, out of what kind of columns of data you want, and automatically generates it, even better. So you don't have to actually put any manual effort into generating that data. And then finally, like I said, if you did performance analysis, you want to make head or tail out of that. Performance data is huge. For us to sit down and pawl through all that data and figure out what actually happened and where often things are going wrong and what to expect if some code has changed. We talked about impact analysis, about if the code has changed, then what test cases got affected and what might fail and what has failed in the past, all that insights, right? It just takes a humongous amount of effort. But there's a lot of this effort that we have been doing over the last years that can easily be codified. And that's what the aim is that we have, is to codify as much as we can. So we'll talk about insights that we can get from performance data that you can show up in easy charts and you can take action on top of that. So those are the three things. I intentionally rushed through it because we are running late, and also I don't want to step into others' time in the future. But these are all the thoughts we have. So I want to take a couple of minutes to ask you, tell me where, Ashish, this is not the right place to do, or this is okay, or whatever, right? But you can tell me here's a bigger problem that you guys should solve. Anybody wants? Yeah.
I just have a question. So I understand that you have the ERP that helps to actually move the quality engineering, if you will, towards the left. Shift left.
Shift left, right.
And then as and when you design the application, your test cases are generated. So as a client, I'll be more interested in knowing two things. Point number one, what is the percentage distribution of the positive and the negative cases? And point number two, how I am doing coverage analysis on the application which is being which is being developed. So these are my 2 points. I just want to know your thoughts on that.
I asked you to challenge me during my presentation. You took it seriously. So I'm going to think about it for a second. But yes, you're right. You're right. Negative, I'm not so sure. I have to think about the negative test cases because what the test cases that I'm generating is based on what I'm seeing and not based on what I'm not seeing. I'll have to put some more thought into it. Right now, once we get over the hump of generating positive test cases, we will definitely look into that. It's a very good idea. So save that thought. The other one was coverage. Coverage is actually very interesting because at this point, we understand the UI. We know what is there. We know what is there in relation to what. And all that we will we definitely will have a repository of what what controls we identified, and then that we will compare it to the test cases that covered all the test cases. So coverage, I think, is going to be straightforward. I will not suggest that we have it, but it's going to be straightforward. We actually can already do that with the existing live application, record and playback and all those things, but we are trying to take it back to design. But coverage is also a very important aspect. I think you're the one who talked about impact analysis earlier, right? So this is a regularly asked question that I think all of us heard, but the coverage is important. As much as when you do JUnits, when you do unit testing, it's paramount, right? We try to aim 80–90% unit test coverage. That's exactly, I'm trying to model it exactly after unit testing. And all the imperatives of unit testing have to be true here.
I would ask Neelma ma'am to please be on the stage to facilitate Ashish. Ashish, just be here for a second.